So visibility alone in and of itself is not a marketing strategy. 2026 is the year that I like to call the return to selfies year, which just means people want authenticity more than anything else. In a reel I did yesterday, I was talking about the depth of storytelling required to help your audience understand the novelty that your business provides. For example, a story that I did recently wasn't necessarily an origin story, but it was a framework that I learned in my childhood while watching my mother do pottery. She sold $18,000 vases. Yes, this is way in like 2008 and before, to a Jewish university. She created perceived demand without having to go to networking events, without changing her prices, without going to all the places, because she stepped in the room where perceived demand was already high and made that room decide, hey, yes, I want to drop $18,000. Yes, I want to drop $9,000 for these beautiful pottery vases. They're flowers. They had flowers that were 3D coming out of them. They were colorful. And so the dean of that university, neurosurgeons that wanted to give their wife something nice, those were the people that could afford and wanted to see value in that. This is the year where going small is going to take you out of business. You're going to have to go to rooms where the perceived value is already higher. Now, I like to actually manufacture this for myself and my clients by telling novel stories through email marketing. Social media is just a little bit too loud. You've probably heard me say this. Instagram is just the front porch. Email is the entire house. Email is the entire sales infrastructure that you need to get somebody to look at your sales page or to book a call with your team or to submit an application, whatever that next step is. And so if you are not refining that system after somebody finds you on social media or your podcast or your YouTube channel with novel storytelling, that perceived demand is already decreased because they can tell that your content is too generic. It sounds like AI wrote it, or it's not helpful for them in that season. Content that is not helpful for your main ideal client in the season they're currently in is really just fluffy content, or content where you're telling stories that don't tie into a bottom line. Because here's one thing. You don't want to tell stories just for the sake of telling stories. Like, you don't want to say, hey, I just picked up pizza last night because it was a busy day and so, unless you're tying it to a value or a principle that you already have in your business. Because storytelling just for the sake of telling stories is not helpful either. This is where you have to be careful with the stories that you tell. This is why I told the story about my childhood and seeing my mom crafting those vases from our basement, which she did not have to do out of necessity, but she did out of abundance because my dad paid all the bills, literally the mortgage, the bills, everything. And so she was not doing it out of necessity. She was doing it out of abundance. That relates to my ideal clients in a multitude of ways. Number one, they see the perceived demand that you can create and generate on your own. That's fundamental in marketing. And I talk marketing, obviously, 9 years going on 10 years in marketing, getting clients $31 million to date collectively, and still counting, still going. And so that had everything to do with my business. But if you're telling stories that have nothing to do with your business, they're not going to link to a product. They're not going to link to a podcast. They're not going to link to some ebook. Then it's going to be difficult to convert those people later. Something else that's going to be super helpful for you in 2026, if you want to increase your email clicks, you want to increase signups from your email list, get used to every single email that you send having a link, okay? Every email needs a call to action, even if you're not selling something. They need to get used to clicking your emails, opening and clicking them, knowing that there's going to be something behind that door, because it's good practice for their nervous system. It's good practice for them to look at your name and see you there like, oh, at Tiffy G Writes, I usually click her emails. There's something in there that she's going to have for me. Versus if you're just sending emails and they don't have any links, people get used to, oh, there's going to be nothing in this email. It does not always have to be a link to a call, although it should be. It does not have to always be a link to a sales page. but it can be a link to a white paper or ebook, which is the next topic that I want to talk about, because white papers and ebooks are a way to get increased website traffic from your email list in just a few hours. It's amazing every time. For some clients, we'll send videos and we'll send like some of their YouTube videos or podcast videos. For other clients and for myself, it's the white papers ebooks that function as almost like a re-engagement series without doing a whole re-engagement series. If you're unfamiliar with a re-engagement series, it's basically when you go through and try to wake your list back up and you try to send emails to the cold people, trying to get them to click. Now, I do this instead of doing an entire series. I'll write a white paper about what I'm learning recently, what I'm doing recently in the business, what clients are doing, a case study. It has to be very specific. It has to be case study focused if you want it to work. And then I'll send it to my email list. It's not a front-facing asset. It's not a front-facing ebook or marketing collateral. It's something designed only for my email list. So I'll send that. And my clicks increase. My clicks will go to like 4%, 6% just from sending a white paper or ebook that matches the time that they're in. For example, it's the top of 2026. You should be writing ultimate guide ebooks. If you don't have time, visit www.tiffygwrites.ai. You can also visit www.tiffygwrites.ai if you're like, hey, I want to see these principles in motion. I want to see novel storytelling. I want to see empathy-inducing stories. I want to see everything you're talking about. You can look at my portfolio. Again, www.tiffygwrites.ai. And it'll have a button that says, show me your portfolio. You'll read it and you'll be like, okay, well, I'm starting to understand how these mechanisms function. You know, I think people don't realize how easy it is to sell with email. I had a recent case study from a client who is a doctor. We've worked together over and over throughout the years. But in this particular case study, she was so tired of Instagram. Okay, it's the top of the year. She's like, I don't want to be on Instagram all the time. If you're a busy expert, if you're a doctor, if you're a nurse practitioner, if you're a therapist, if you are an engineer, if you are someone that is super busy while building a business, you know exactly what I mean. Whether you still run or have your 9-to-5, or you are solo, or you're running a business and you have a team, you know that your time is limited and you don't want to spend most of it on social, because remember, on social media, and you can check your analytics, back up what I'm saying, like you should pause this video, pull out your analytics right now, look at your insights and see that at any given time, you reach 2 to 3% of your total audience on social media. No matter how good you are at organic marketing, the way that social media algorithms work, I know I used to be a social media manager. They only allow you to see 2 to 3% of your audience, or your post to see 2 to 3% of your audience at any given time. Lives are good if you want to attract some of your followers, but they really decrease your reach. And then reels are good when you want to increase your reach, but maybe your followers don't see it as much. Carousels are great for your followers so that you can nurture them. But that's like having your email list have an open rate of 2%. If you know anything about email marketing, you know you would never get an open rate of 2% on your email list. The average open rate for an email list is actually 21% across all industries. So we'll just go with that number, okay? And the average click rate is like 1.6% across all industries. So we're gonna go with those two numbers, 21% and 1%. Now imagine, instead of spending so much time on social media, or you do the exact equal amount of time. I like to do that. I like to balance 50% social media, 50% email marketing. And so you're writing captions, you're sending videos, you're sending podcast episodes that you pre-recorded. You can even send your email list to your Instagram if that is where you're housing some of your long form content. You're sending that to your email list and you're seeing 21% average open rates every single time. And there are ways to guarantee to get it higher. There are certain subject lines that you can use. You may not be aware of them, but as an email marketing strategist, there is certain subject lines, certain topics based on curiosity, following up and saying, hey, I think you missed your session. That's always going to get you an increased open rate and typically an increased click rate, because you're reminding people who actually wanted to work with you. Okay. So I want you to picture, like, what would your life look like if all of your emails have a 21% open rate versus your social media posts that you spend so much time on? Maybe you have a social media manager, you're paying $10,000, $15,000 in ads, and it's just not functioning. This is the value not only of organic marketing, but building your email list in real time and nurturing them. Because it doesn't help if you have this email list, but you are only talking to them once per week. Once per week is not enough. Once per week is now like back in the days when you would email somebody once per month. Everybody has an email list. There are multiple subscribers that people have. There are multiple lists that they're subscribed to. And so you're going to have to stand out more than once per week for sure. Back to this doctor. She generated $58,899. Now, 2 of those clients that were generated through that revenue, they went to buy a mastermind that was $9,000. The main offer was $4,000, okay? And she had been launching on social media, but she was tired. She was able to triple her results by focusing on an email marketing funnel. She did not really even launch loudly via social. The main launch was through her email list. And this launch was comprised of 25 emails. The way that I have clients do it, or that I'll do it for them, is pre-launch, the actual launch, and then post-launch frameworking, okay? The pre-launch is about creating that demand. That's where the storytelling is super important. I'm not big on origin stories anymore. I used to be, but the way that the internet's going, the age of AI, you're gonna have to be a little bit more creative and find a different type of story, something that's very novel, that can connect. Again, the best example was that story I was telling you from my mom when I was a child. If there's something like a vacation that you took that can tie back into business, a session with your therapist that can tie back into business, novelty like that, not just like, oh, I started this business because. Those origin stories, they are getting very boring very quickly because everybody's doing them. Whenever there's a label and everybody knows, oh, that's an origin story, it's kind of like it dulls it out. It makes it a little boring. And so you want to come in with more creativity. That's, again, why the 20 question framework is so important. And I have clients go through that live on our first call for 45 minutes to an hour and a half to cover, hey, let's dig deeper into your message and dig deeper into what's going on in your everyday life that we can pull into your messaging. It's going to be adjacent to what you're teaching your audience or what you're talking to your audience about. And then if you can get into philosophical marketing. So what are some of your philosophical values and beliefs? Not as many tips and tricks. Tips and tricks are good for just posting on social and growing. But when people are ready to make a buying decision, they also care about your values, not just seeing your face. It's nice to see my face. It's nice to see like, oh, look at how she looks, fantastic. But if somebody doesn't know what your values are, then they're not going to trust you enough to buy from them because they need to know who you are, not just see your face. Just by seeing my face doesn't tell you a whole lot about me. Hearing my voice, obviously you get that human approach, but if you understand my values, how I'm empathy driven, narrative focused, and data driven, then you can say, oh, that's actually one of the values that we have written down on our website. And that's an immediate way to create a connection with your audience. Yes, $58,899 in 89 days. I call it 90 days, but basically 89 days. Fantastic at the top of the year. Because this is the season where at the top of the year, every year it's like this. The end of the year and the top of the year are typically my busiest seasons in business. And then summer for whatever reason, because people are like on break or whatever. But the top of the year is important because as a business owner, you know that what you do or do not do now will impact what March 2026 looks like, what July 2026 looks like, what October and what December 2026 look like. And so if you're not sending emails to your list, if you are exhausted from not functioning as an operator level CEO and you're writing emails and they have no real value, no intrinsic value, and deep inside you know that, you feel a little bit of guilt like, man, I know that I just typed these up over breakfast real quick and then I work with my clients because I'm so busy. Your audience deserves well thought out strategy. Say it with me. My audience deserves well thought out strategy. They deserve the marketing that comes out of you being in a marketing boardroom for an hour or two, because that's what corporations are doing. You're going to have to start thinking on the corporate level. They deserve that caliber of messaging that is not just fly of the whim, off the rip, or like, hey, I was listening to this radio station. They deserve aligned copywriting and an aligned message that matches where they are right now. And if you do not provide that, or if you're sending emails that do not provide that depth of value, then your competition is going to do it. I can definitely say that. Your competition, whether it's finance, tax relief, wellness, mental health care, these are just recent industries I've been working with, e-commerce, whatever industry it is, there is someone that's willing to go much deeper. There's someone out there that's saying, hey, you know what, I'm going to control my social media, but I'm going to bring in a marketing director to do my emails. There's someone out there that says, hey, I know people on social media say, oh, it's so hard to offline your voice to someone else. But when you go through a 20-question framework, when you have a creative brief handed to you, when you create documentation and standard operating procedures around your voice, it's not difficult to hand off to. It's the inevitable next step to scaling. So you're going to have to decide, am I going to be that person in 2026 or not? And if you are going to be that person, there's an application link in my description, or you can go to www.tiffygwrites.ai to fill out your application. It takes about 10 to 15 minutes because this is a boardroom meeting. This is not the type of thing you spend 10 minutes, ChatGPT writes your copy, and then you get no sales. That's not the goal here. The goal here is to pull out the most novel stories, empathy-driven stories, and then matching that with sales psychology principles that have been tried and true and tested literally since the 1800s. Now, if I were to continue on this video, I would start talking to you about the history of advertising and going on a rant, but I'm like, hey, we're 17 minutes in. I'm not going to do that today, but I may come back and do it because the history of advertising is something that I think more people should understand and know about. For example, I'll just intercede a little bit on the history of advertising. Sales pages, this was the most shocking thing to me. Sales pages have been around since the 1800s. People in the 1800s would literally get on their typewriter, write a sales page. Yes, they had networking events back then, but the networking event, like Instagram, was only the front door. The sales happened once someone, I wish I had a piece of paper here so I could act it out. Once someone looked at the paper, looked at the sales